Hello, my name is Edwin. I've never really done this kind of thing before, so um, forgive me if I say like and a lot, and it's very unprofessional. Um, so, I have been a graphic designer for over a year now, and specifically working in doing magazine stuff. Do like just a local fashion magazine, Rome Boulder, shout out. There's a link on my channel and probably in the description of this video if you want to go check it out. Also to my portfolio, so you know that I'm not just some random stranger on the internet trying to give advice or whatever. But also shout out to David on Reddit. There's a Y in there, but I really butchered that. It's fine. For motivating me to make this video. I've been really needing to update my kind of tutorial video that I kind of hand out to the new graphic designers that I help train or that are new to this kind of thing, and I generally wanted to put this online. So if anyone wanted to get like a basic introduction onto, how to use Adobe InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, all that good stuff for making a magazine or anything like that, print products generally, then you can do that. Right now, I'm using the Adobe 2024 suite, so I have InDesign 2023. Oop, I'm not sure if they updated that yet. I'm using Photoshop 2024 and Illustrator 2024. Now, so I usually gravitate to these three programs. I'm not really a photographer, so I don't claim to be an expert in Lightroom at all. But, we're just going to focus on these three programs for this video. So you can use just about any combination of these three programs for this. You can use, Photoshop and InDesign, you can use Illustrator and InDesign, you can just use InDesign, you can use all three. But the important thing is that you need to use InDesign. And I hate that so much. With every fire in my soul. Because InDesign is extremely clunky in just in comparison to Photoshop and Illustrator. It's clunky in comparison to the rest of the Adobe suite, but it does have some necessary features for making this making this process happen. Now, I'm going to start with InDesign. I'm going to section this video off. I'm going to start with InDesign. I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to go to Illustrator, and I'm going to go back into InDesign. I'm going to show you how you can use all three of these programs, or really any one of them, for making this. Really, I do want to get some language stuff out of the way. So I'm going to be doing spreads in this video. And if you're new to magazine language, a spread is 2 pages versus, a single page, right? A single piece of paper. A spread is 2 pages that, like, if you're opening a book, they'll face inwards toward each other. You're supposed to look at them together. So I am going to be working on that. If people like this and want me to make a video about just a single page, I can totally do that. But for now, I am just going to do a basic 2-page spread. So I'm going to start here in InDesign. And the reason that I'm going to start with InDesign is because everything will eventually have to be put through InDesign. And setting up the measurements for the end product will give you a vision to shoot for when setting up, those measurements in Illustrator and your Photoshop documents. So when you open up InDesign, it's going to be this screen it's been for, the entire first part of this video. And you can just go to letter or whatever like that. I'm just going to go to new file up here. It's going to open up this window. And it's going to start with this probably like custom or defaults. If it generally looks like this, you should be fine. However, What the fuck's a pica? What the fuck? So we're gonna put that into inches, into American language, right? And as you see, it says the width by default is 8.5 inches and the height is 11 inches. That's just a basic regular piece of printer paper. The average piece of paper that you're going to come across in your everyday life. Now, this, I'm going to go to default really quickly because it will not say all of that. I'm just going to go to inches, 8.5 by 11 by default, facing pages, and the orientation will be portrait. So for the column gutter with this measurement, and all these measurements will be in the description, by the way, just so you don't have to keep watching the video for it. I know it's kind of annoying. Be 0.375 inches, and then for the margins, be the same thing. And I just click away, and all of them auto-populate if they're like linked like that. Now for bleed and slug. For bleed, I'm going to put 0.125 inches. Click away. It all matches. I'm not going to touch on slug. I'm going to be honest. I totally forgot what it means. You will see what each of these different parameters does and how it changes the document. So I'm going to hit create. It's going to take a minute. So now we have our big old page here. Now this red line on the outside here is our bleed. And the reason I want to bring that up first is anything that goes over this edge of the page on any of the sides, right, and goes over that will not be included usually when you are printing something. The bleed is for if you're putting something on the edge of a page. Sometimes there can be printing issues and you want to have a little bit of extra stuff there so it doesn't just go to a blank white or something like that and cut off immediately and look very obviously like there was a printing error. So that's what you have bleed to account for, but do not count ever on anything in the bleed to be showing up on your page. It's really just a protective measure. Now, like I said, or I guess implied, this big white square or rectangle is your page. It's the same measurements we put in. It's the 8.5 by 11. And this is going to be your main workspace here. These purple little bits are just to mark out your margins, and that means that this distance between the edge of the page and the margin is going to be the 0.375 inches that we put in at the very beginning. Now that we've got that all out of the way, for the rest of the InDesign stuff, that's going to be in the second section at the end of this video. I'm going to try and section it out with like the chapters thing. Never done this before. Give me a break if it is not working or whatever. If there are no chapters, check the description or check the comments. I'm sure I'll put it somewhere where the sections are. Now, moving into the Photoshop and Illustrator segments of the video, I'm going to use both just to show you how you can use each of them individually. You can use them together, but I'm not going to get into that right now. If you are using Illustrator, please watch the Photoshop section of the video as well. There's some important information when I was preparing, getting everything ready for this video that you are going to need to have, and it's just going to be a lot easier for you to understand kind of what's going on generally if you watch the Photoshop section of the video as well. I'm sorry, I know it's inconvenient. Illustrator is inconvenient enough to learn if you're coming over from Photoshop or any other program, but what's a little more, I guess, you know what I mean? Now, the measurements for the guides I'm going to be using in these programs is going to be in the description, and I would recommend, if you're just starting out, it's totally fine to just be comfortable with one program. When I started out, I only used Photoshop. I didn't even see the InDesign side of it. I only started getting into this stuff when I was getting into that side of it, and then later got into Illustrator. I've used just about any combination you can think of these programs to make a spread and put together a magazine. So don't feel discouraged if you don't get it right away, or if you're not familiar with all of them. I would just recommend from like a general designer standpoint, getting familiar with all of them will just help you out in the long term. The earlier you start, the better. I'm going to start with Photoshop just because it's the most popular program. It's the program I started with. It's the program most people start with. You can ignore all of this. That's just personal projects and other magazine stuff. Check out rumboulder.com if you want to check out what any of this went to. But what I'm going to do here in Photoshop, now that we're here, new file, new document. I have whatever clipboard, I don't care. It'll, whatever this is, don't worry about it. We're going to go we're going to go to width. We're going to do, instead of 8.5 by 11, what we're going to do here is 17.25 inches. Not in pixels. So change it from pixels over to inches if you haven't already. 17.25 inches for width, and then height is going to be 11.25 inches. Now, I know it's kind of confusing. There's a good reason for that. I'm also going to change the resolution to 300 pixels per inch. This is part of the differences between InDesign and Photoshop and Illustrator and kind of what they're used for. InDesign expects you to do individual pages, but what I'm setting up here to do spreads is, a spread is 2 pages, so including the size of the bleed on all sides, as well as putting 2 pages right next to each other, that is going to add up to 11.25 inches in height, 17.25 inches in width. It'll all be fine. Just hang in there. If you're confused, it'll be fine. So I'm going to create that. It kind of popped up for a second, but I do already have a document here that I have put together for, previous designers, kind of like just to send out as a general thing. But you see here, width 17.25, height 11.25, to account for bleed. If you want to screenshot this really quick, or if you want to just pause here, that's totally fine. This page will tell you just about everything you need to know on how to set up your guides. And that's what's important here. Now, okay. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm moving on. Screenshotters be gone. Now, what I want to start with here is just the difference between guides. You see here it says need to be guide layouts versus need to be guides. Guide layouts are multiple lines as guides, and you can save them as presets. This is really important because if you want to just keep doing stuff in Photoshop, it's so nice to not have to memorize all of those measurements and to just be able to go to, view, guides, new guide layout, pick your preset. It's already there for you. It'll be totally fine. Now, you saw that I went to view, guides, guide layout, and guide. That's where you're going to go to input all of these measurements. When you open up the window for the guides and guide layouts, all of this language will make sense to you. Just trust me, take a minute. If you need to pause right now and just go do it, that's fine. But first, I'm going to go into, what guides are. Now, guides versus guide layouts, you can save them. Guides, you cannot. It's a single line. If you want to keep using guides, you need to memorize those measurements, essentially, to put them in. And the only essential ones that I have as guides, there are 3. And it's the direct center of the page, the center of the left page, and the center of the right page. So if I hit Control : to show all my guides again, you can see the yellow one as it says here, and the yellow one over here. Those are what those are, and this cyan one in the middle is the center of the page. Now, you kind of see the, what you can see here is like the bleed right over here. Just what it does is now in your document you have built-in bleed, and it'll show up on your document. That's totally fine. I would recommend filling the entire space of the page, and don't just use the stuff that's not the bleed, because you'll see later. It's gonna be so fun. Of how we'll put it into InDesign. Now you see the margins here. You see like the edge of the page here, margin here, kind of goes around like that. You don't need to have all these guides. You really, really don't. This is just to kind of demonstrate, what all of these could be. Again, the ones on the left page here are all the essential guides. The other ones, the green ones, the dark blue ones, you really don't need. And I'm going to be honest, like, you don't even really need the right page and left page centers, and then like the page center margins here in magenta. You may need them at some point. It's just nice to keep them around, but you don't absolutely need them. What you really need right now are the margins of the entire document that go around all of this, and layout, where the edge of the page, where the bleed begins, where the page begins, where the margins are. These document center margins, this is, center to the document, right? And what it is it's just like the margin of each page cut by the cyan line at the center of the document, which separates, this page from this page. Those are the only ones that you need to have right now. Again, take a minute, put these in your document. I recommend, if you're not following along, follow along, open up Photoshop and put this in. Maybe at some point, if people really want this document specifically, like the PSD, I can upload it somewhere. I don't expect to make money off of this, but I don't know. Maybe a Patreon thing. Whatever. And essentially what you're going to want to do is just get your page set up. Now, if I pull up my notes again, I think that's all that we're really going to need to touch on for Photoshop. Like, once you have these in, you can start designing whatever. If you don't use Illustrator, whatever, you can skip that section, skip on over to InDesign, and maybe come back if you're learning Illustrator later. But I'm going to move on to Illustrator. So, hello Illustrator users. Thank you for hanging in there with that long-ass Photoshop section. It will make sense to you. That measurement page and everything will help you make sense of what we're going to do. So now that we're here in Illustrator, we're going to go to a new file. Again, I have like print things saved, but you can see here, it'll be in pixels. You're going to switch it over to inches. Width 17.25 inches, height 11.25 inches. Just going with one artboard. There is a bleed setting that you can use here. I personally don't use it. You don't have to use it. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to be using it. I just don't want to get into it right now. I'm using 300 ppi, just like the Photoshop document. I'm going to create this. Now, guides in Illustrator are much more confusing than they are in Photoshop. Well, more confusing and less confusing. If you know, you know. I'm going to explain it here. But if you go to View, like you would in Photoshop, you go to Guides, down here, you can't make any guides. Not only that, but there's only Make Guides and no guide layouts. Now, this would seem like, it's a major, con to using Illustrator. I'm going to actually show you why it's not. I have this other document over here that has my guides set up for me, using the measurements that I was using in the Photoshop section of the video. I have my guides set up for me right here. I'm not sure if you can see them. They're like cyan, which on white is awful. But if I go to my layers panel, I can actually select this. They turn red. You can see them all now. You can see, bleed, margin, page. You have your center margins. You have your center of the page line. And they don't need to cross over the bounds of the page like they do in Photoshop. Now the reason for this is if I go to guides, I'm just going to release guides. If you see here, they're all just, go into the group, they're all just a bunch of shapes. They're just lines, they're boxes, they're individual little pieces that I have placed here. And again, I can also just make a file or upload this with the guides in it, if people really, really want that. But for now, you can look in the transform section up here and just see kind of generally where stuff is. And if you have any trouble, you can always figure this out based on the measurements that are in the Photoshop section, which is why I wanted y'all to watch that. I am going to just show these really quick on screen. Give them each a few seconds on screen just to let people absorb what's going on. Because there's some pretty specific measurements, as you can see. The X on this is 13.0625 inches. I've mathed this out all myself, so I wouldn't want you to do that. Have to do that on your own. It defeats the purpose of the video. So I have these now all as a group, so if I select it, it'll select all of them. What I'm going to go do is I'm going to go to View, Guides, Make Guides, right? And now they work as guides. You need to create shapes, essentially, and then select them, and then go to the Make Guides thing for Illustrator to recognize them as guides. And now you can do the control column thing that I was doing in Photoshop and to hide them and show them. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but they are disappearing and reappearing. And what's interesting about this, it would seem like, oh, I got to set this up every time I make a new document. But because you can go, like I did at the beginning, and select this whole group of all the guides here as an object, you can Control-C, copy that, go over to the document that you want to put it in, and I'm going to go Control-Shift-V to paste in place so they don't move around or they're not in a different place on the page than they were in the previous one, which they shouldn't be. And as you can see, they're working as guides here, just as they were on the other page. You can do the Control semicolon and it'll work, which I think is really cool. So if you want to just have one document, I'm kind of messy about it. I'm not good about it. But if you just want to have one document with all your guides on it, with all your guide groups on it, and you want to name this a specific thing, you can just have that open whenever you're starting a new document or a new spread. Copy that, paste it in, boom, you're done. Easy, 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 easy. Now, looking back at my notes again. Yeah. I think that's all for this section. From here, you can get designing, whatever you want to do. You can put an article spread on here. You can put just a photo spread on here. I'm going to treat this video as if you're making an article spread just because they can also have photos on them. I'm just going to quickly whip up a basic, or I guess I might just like drag some spreads that I already have in and use those. But we're going back to InDesign now. So, welcome back. everybody. We're reconvening InDesign Part 2. So if you've gone through the parts of the videos that you should have at this point, you have your Photoshop or Illustrator files. And now we need to get them in here. So first, we need to consider a cover page. Now, it says here on the pages side here, it'll probably start you in properties, but you can go to pages here. This is page 1. This is going to be our cover page. Again, I'm not getting into single pages right now. Cover pages are mostly what those are going to be good for. I'm not sure if you can hear my brother in the background. Ooh. But sorry about that. This is going to be our cover page. Is just this single page here. Now, if I go and add down here 2 new pages, you can see that it separates them. So this is a separate page, and these are going to face in towards each other. This is our spread. Now, before I show you how to like put these in here, first what I'm going to do is I am going to go to a parent up here. Just double click that. It's going to pull up the parent pages that, you know, anything that we do to this page, this fake page, will apply to all of our 2-page spreads. So I go to the page tool up here. Oh, voice crack. And I go to properties again and go to margins and columns. And you see it's the 0.375 inches that we were using earlier, but it only has 1 column. Now, all we have to do here, and another one. Boom, we have our like our text column margins here. We don't have a line at the center of each page, but that's why you would want to have that as a guide in your Illustrator or Photoshop files, so you don't have to worry about that. But now that we've done that, that'll apply to all our new pages. We're going to go back to pages. I'm going to tap V and just go back to select. Click on any other page to get out of the parent page. So now we're back in our normal view. And as you can see, it affected all the pages. And I'm going to add a couple more pages just so we can use both the Photoshop and Illustrator files. Now, if you haven't already, take your Photoshop and or Illustrator files, save them, but save them to your desktop, preferably in a folder where, you know, everything that you're using for this magazine or whatever is going to be kept together, just so it's easy to find, just for organizational purposes. You can save it on an SSD or something else like that to the cloud or whatever later, but for right now, you're gonna want to have them on your desktop. I am going to grab some spreads really quick, some spread files, and just save them to my computer really quick, just because I have a lot of that on the cloud and on my MacBook. So I'll be right back with that. Alrighty, so right here I have one folder with both my Illustrator and Photoshop files already ready. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to save this document really quick. In that same folder. So when I open it up again, it's saving, and it should be fine. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do the Photoshop one first. So I'll show you the Photoshop one. This is, forgive me, I really like this one, but it's from over a year ago at this point. So if there are some inconsistencies, I was still learning. Forgive me. And then the Illustrator one right over here. If you can see that, it's ASCII art, so that's all text. Now, I'm not going to convert any of the text in this video, but you definitely should. And I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I'm going to drop this one. Just go to the file, wherever it is, drag that file right into InDesign, right onto the page that I want it to be on, right onto that spread. It'll pop up like that. You have to click again, and now it's here. You can see it's there in all its very pixelated glory. Now, because we've set this document up to be the same size as 2 pages plus bleed, we can slot it right into that red box. It'll fit perfectly. It will, if this is like one of the first times you're opening InDesign, or if you haven't done this already, it looks really pixelated. It's not just your screen, that's me too. I usually work on my MacBook, so I'm just going to go to View, Display Performance. I'm going to go to High Quality Display, and that should fix the pixelization. And I'm sure you saw it kind of sharpen up there. But I was messing with this earlier. I hate InDesign's zooming thing. It's so... But you can see it's sharp just like it is in the Photoshop document. And with the Illustrator document, you can do the exact same thing. Stop that. Not sure if you can hear my brother laughing in the background. We share a wall, so it's kind of hard to eliminate some of that noise. Drag this Illustrator file, drop it right on the page I want it on, click back in here, and same thing. So just drag it right into that box. It should slot perfectly in with how we set everything up. And boom, you have spreads. Now, you could technically just be like, okay, I'm done. It's in InDesign. That everything needs to go through InDesign. It's in InDesign. I'm done. However, I didn't have any article spreads to really show off this part of it, and at this point I hadn't, in my career I hadn't really figured that out, how InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop render text and documents differently generally. But what you're gonna want to do, just speaking now, press T or go to your text tool. You're gonna want to render your text in InDesign. Now, if you're like me, you will have already put your text in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever. And what you can do now is drag a text box like I just did over where the text is. I could just go over to Photoshop. Huh? I don't care. Okay, it had to change the font for some reason. Control A, select all of it, copy it, back to InDesign, put that back in there, select all of that, make it all white, or paper, I guess. But you can see now that it's kind of rendering this differently. I'm going to just make sure all the text sizes are the same. So this is let's be 2 sizes bigger. But even then, right, you can drag it around but it'll still just be slightly off, and that's just due to some differences in how InDesign and Photoshop and Illustrator will render text. And you don't want to export it right now because now you have all this unreadable jargon. However, part of the dragging and dropping, or you can also go to, I think, File and Place, to place the file there. Part of that is now you have, and if I go to Windows and I go to Links here, it'll show my linked files here. So it has this one here. When you drag and drop them, it treats them like linked files, and therefore as live files. So now I can just go back into Photoshop for this. I can hit escape. I can hide this layer. I can hit Control S to save that, wait for it to save and everything. Okay, InDesign will pick up, as you can see with this little yellow caution sign here, it'll pick up that the file is changed, or it's been changed. I can double click that, and boom, it's fixed. Now all I have is the text here, and you can do this with any edits that you want to make. So as you're working on a spread, if you want to like test it out, just see how it's going to lay out in InDesign, and then go back and like save and change things up a bit. You can also go into links, and the little caution sign should be there if it's not linked. And if you have high quality display on and you're having some issues just with pixelated images or things like that, chances are you can just go to linked files. It's probably not linked correctly, or you moved it to a different folder after you linked it, and you just need to relink the file, and it should fix itself. It'll just like go to a lower resolution, usually for files that are not linked correctly or that it detects have been changed. That's how you can do that. Now, again, you don't need to do this with all your text. If something looks better in Illustrator or whatever, or I don't want people to like be able to select this text in a PDF format, and just copy paste it, new copy pasta. Like I can just keep that in my Illustrator file, and I don't need to convert it over here. Same thing with this, where it's like more highly designed. I have like if I were to zoom in on there, you can see there's little bits of grit and stuff like that. That I need the text to be under those Photoshop layers in order for that to get that effect. That's totally fine. It's mostly this fine text that you are going to want to be worried about. This is also, I'm just going to add in a little tip here. If I'm doing an article spread, right, let's say I had the text placed in here, I just stretched the box out to be like that, and be within the margins like a regular text column. You can see that text box goes right up to that black border there, and that can kind of muddy the text sometimes. Usually what I'll do to get around this, I'll just select the text box with Select Tool. I'll go to Options down at Text Frame in the Properties tab, and I will go to Spacing, and because our bleed is 0.125 inches, I'll put in 0.0625, just cut that in half because it's linked. I'll click away, they'll all update, and now I'll have just a little bit of space around all of the text, so I'm not worried about that black border muddying up the text or whatever, or if I have like other images that are really close to the margin, it's still going to be somewhat readable. Now I wouldn't want to do that here just because of the way this page is laid out, but generally that's typically what I like to do. Another one, you can see it here, that it bugs me to no end why this is enabled by default. Where is it? Where are you? Type. I go to paragraph, and I'll just kind of slot that in right here, and I will disable hyphenation because it drives me crazy. Usually also what I'll do if I'm doing like the start of an article, you can go just delete this bullet point. Let's pretend this is the beginning of the article. I can select that single letter and go to this A thing at the bottom of the paragraph. Boom, drop caps. So if you ever wanted to learn how to do that, that's also there. You just need to specifically select that one. And you should be fine for whatever. You can use drop caps, you can not use drop caps. I don't really care. That's totally up to you and the people that that you're working with. But yeah, that is essentially everything. That's essentially everything. I'm gonna check my notes again and just see if there's anything that I may have missed. No, that looks good. If you have any questions, if you know me personally, you're probably gonna be watching this video. If you know me personally, you can always reach out to me personally and ask me questions about it. If not, if you are like David, I believe was the name on Reddit, or someone just watching this, put it in the comments or something like that. Reach out to me on Instagram, whatever. I'll try and get to any questions or whatever like that. Just let me know. And if anyone has any other tutorial recommendations in this kind of field, or even outside of this, I have other interests too. This is not my only interest. Then be sure to let me know. But goodbye, I guess. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Goodbye. Whoa. Good night. Good morning. Good night. Good night.